Okay, it's recording. Cool. Let's just present. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my workshop, Hash Cracking Tools and Techniques. The course number is ACM 15L. Oh, yeah, and that's the check-in code, hash. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay, my arrow key is not working. There, okay. So now the tools that I'm going to be using in this workshop are these three ones: Hashcat, John the Ripper, and Ophcrack. If you want to follow along with the workshop, you'll have to go to those links and install them. If not, you can just watch me. You can just watch me do this stuff. In general, I've been having trouble like installing them from the websites. What I did with these things was I brew installed them on my Mac, and it seems to work fine. So if you are trying to install them, I may or may not be able to help you. I only know how to do this from Mac brew install. Chris might be able to help you. I'm not sure though. But okay, let me put those links in the chat. I can't see the chat right now. There's that. There's that. Okay. So what is hashing? Well, generally speaking, hashing is mapping data to fixed sized values. And you've probably seen this if you've taken CSE 12 or if you know about hash tables. What that does is it assigns a hash value to a certain input so you can put the data into the correct place into the hash table. Now we'll get to what this has to do with passwords in a minute, but first let's just talk about how passwords are stored. Okay, so imagine there's a service, Black Mesa, that's the company, and they have some service where you have to log in with your credentials to be able to use it. What they'll have to do is they'll have to store your username and password in their databases somewhere. So when someone like me wants to access my account, I'd have to input my username and my password, and the service would compare them and say, okay, you're good, that's you. You can log in. But here's the problem with that. If a malicious hacker manages to get into the database, then they will have all the usernames and all the passwords in plain text, so they'll be able to log in as you, and the service wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And that's bad. We don't want that. So here's where hashing functions come in. So as I told you before, a hash function maps data of any size into a string of a fixed size, also known as a hash. And in order to store passwords, a good hash function has to have these properties. It's easy to compute in one direction, but difficult to generate the original input if you're given the output. And it's also difficult to create an input that would match the given output. You'll see an example of this. So we can convert these passwords into these strings of text, the hashes. Okay, using that function. And then this time, what the service Black Mesa is going to do is it's going to store the username and the password hashes. Now, when I want to log in with my account, I give my username and password, and the service will convert the password I enter into the hash, and then it'll compare the hashes. And then it'll say, okay, that is you. You may log in. And so now if the bad guy over here gets the information from the database, all they'll have is the password hashes, which they cannot use to log in. They'll need the original password. And here's just some common hash functions. An MD5 hash is probably what you'll see in a lot of CTF challenges if you do CTFs. They generate 120-bit outputs or 32 hexadecimal characters. In fact, if you go back to these are MD5 hashes. If you count the number of characters, that's 30. It should be 32. But there are weaknesses in MD5, and that's because of collisions. That is, multiple different inputs can result in the same output, and this has been exploited, and so it's generally not considered the best hash, which is why other hashing algorithms were made, like SHA-1, which outputs 160-bit outputs, and it's not as vulnerable to these kinds of collisions as MD5 is. Another one, SHA-2, is actually multiple algorithms. You can see them over there. The length of the hashes that it generates is actually in the name over there. So SHA-224 generates a 224-bit hash, and so on. It's generally more secure than SHA-1, but it's not as widely used. Okay, so now that we know this, how exactly are you going to crack one of these hashes? Well, as I told you before, it's extremely difficult to figure out what the original input is if you're just given the output. So you'll have to find a way around this. You can crack a hash in a few ways. The first one is just the brute force method. You keep generating passwords until you get a password whose hash matches the hash you want. And that will probably take a long time. And then another way you could do it is with a rainbow table. So basically, you would have a list of hashes in which you're going to compare your hash to. And so once you go through the table, you find the hash which matches your hash, and then you know the password which corresponds to it. And also a dictionary attack. You have a list of passwords to work from. And so you go through each of those passwords, turn them into hashes, and see if that is the hash you're looking for. And when I say you are doing this, I mean the tool that you're using is doing this. And we're going to get to some of those tools in a minute. Yeah. Okay. So since people in ACM tend to like cats, here's a cat for you. It's very cute. Hashcat is one of the, I'd say one of the better tools for cracking hashes because there's just a lot you can do with it. Yeah, I gotta switch monitors now. Okay, well, just to give you a perspective on what you might be able to do with Hashcat, if you go to that link, you'll be able to see a list of like different types of hashes that Hashcat is able to crack, depending on how you enter the command. And yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, so let us start with, okay, let's start with the basic one. So this command, which I'm going to show you in a minute, let's break it down first. So hashcat, this is what you'll be inputting into your terminal. Hashcat, that just invokes, it just invokes hashcat. -A specifies the attack mode, and the attack mode is 0, which is what's called a straight attack. I'll show you this later. -M is the type of hash that you'll be cracking. 0 specifies this is an MD5 hash. And then these two parameters over here, this one is going to be a text file with the list of hashes that you want to crack. And this one is important. This is going to be the dictionary. Remember I told you about the dictionary attack? Well, you're going to need a list of potential passwords for this to work. And the list I'm using over here is the RockU list of passwords. It's a pretty famous RockU. It's a pretty famous list of passwords that that resulted from a really big password leak. And so it's got a lot of passwords in there that we can use. If you're following along with the workshop on your own computer, you're going to want to download rocku.txt. You can just search it up. But if you're not following along, then you don't have to. Okay, so now to demonstrate something in the chat. Hackercat, yes. To demonstrate, I'm going to open up my terminal window is actually already open, but I have to switch this. Share. Okay, you guys can see a big terminal window here, right? Yep, okay. Okay, so as you can see here, I've created a folder in which I've got the tools I'm going to use. Yeah, there's the RockU list in the chat. So now if we want to crack a password, such as one of the ones I showed you before. So here's the hash, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to input it into that file, which I'm calling hashes.txt, if you can see it. Okay, there's already a few of them in there. Let me get rid of those. Okay, so that's the hash in there. I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to run the command which I showed you. Except it's not called list.txt, it's called rocku text. I hate this screen. Yeah, rocku.txt. Okay, and remember this is a dictionary attack. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through the passwords in rocku.txt and find the one whose hash matches the one in hashes.txt. Okay, let's run that. Yeah, and there it is. The password was password1. And it got that pretty quickly, as you saw. Okay, before I go on to the next one, If you type hashcat dash dash help, you'll see all the different kinds of parameters and flags you can input to specify how exactly you want to crack these, how you exactly want to crack hashes. As I showed you before, the -m flag will allow you to specify one of these numbers. 0 is an MD5 hash. You can also do an MD4 hash, the predecessor to MD5. Here's SHA-1. So if you were to try to crack a SHA-1 hash, then in that command that I used, instead of M0, you would have M100. And then again, the other part of the command I used, the format, the attack mode, yeah. I used -A0, which is a straight attack. So it basically just used the word list I gave it. There's also these other attack modes over there. We won't get to all of them. I will show you brute force later though. And yeah, there's basically a lot you can specify, and so there's a lot you can do with Hashcat. Zoom in. Oh, I actually don't think I can increase the text size. Is it that bad? Is it hard to see? Okay, I'm not getting a response. It's visible, okay. Cool, so now the next part is back to the presentation. Okay, an exercise for the readers. Here's some hashes that I'm going to paste into the chat. And I'm going to let you try to see if you can crack them. Actually, is anyone here actually trying to use Hashcat, or is everyone just watching? Just watching. Okay. If no one's going to try to use the tools, then okay. Okay, well, let me put them in the chat, just in case. It's all one blob. But yeah, I guess if no one's following along with Hashcat, then I could just demonstrate this. Let me shift to select multiple windows. Can I do that? Okay, if I share two, what does it look like? Oh, okay. So now you can see my terminal. Okay, that's convenient. I guess I don't have to keep switching like that then. Yeah, so I'll just demonstrate this myself. So these are the hashes. I'm going to copy this into my hashes.txt file. Okay, and let's try the same thing that we did. Hashcat. Okay. Yeah, so it managed to crack those ones over there. I don't know if it noticed, but there was actually one of them that it didn't crack. See, it cracked these four, but this one it couldn't. And I will tell you why. It's because that one is actually not an MD5 hash. It is an SHA1 hash. So going back to hashes.txt, you'll notice that it's actually longer than the other hashes. So it's not 32 bits. Sorry, 128 bit. It's not 128 bit. It is actually the 160 bit SHA1 hash. So you can still break that with Hashcat. Remember, I told you above there was a code for SHA-1 100. So if we try, don't open calendar. Darn. So if we try the same command, except instead of M0, we type in M100, then it breaks that hash. There it is, let me in, right? Okay. So now, going back to the workshop. Okay, now this website. It's obvious that you don't want like your user information out there in a list somewhere. So this website, haveyoubeenpwned.com, you can enter in your email address and it'll show you if it's been in a data breach somewhere. You can also do the same thing with your password. I've never tried this though. I don't think I want to input my password there. Yes. So just as a fun exercise, why doesn't everyone just go to the website that Tristan put in the chat and see for yourself?
So I joined Zoom from my Cisco endpoint. What? I joined a Zoom meeting from my Cisco.
Yeah, you could put fake passwords, I guess. It's the password one. That was that was one of the passwords I showed you earlier. Yeah, that's a lot of pwns. Okay. Have you guys tried your email addresses? I want to know. Have you been pwned? It's poll time. I don't think there's an actual poll set up, so if you can just say in the chat if you've been pwned. You've been pwned, okay. Oh, whoa. William, is that you? Pwned many times. Okay. All right. Well, that was interesting, but I guess let us continue over here. Okay. So now, is there a way to make these hashes more secure? Um, and the answer is yes. So one way you can make them more secure is to add random data to the password before hashing it. This is called salt. You're making what's called you're making what's called a salted hash. Um, and the random data, the salt, can be added either before or after the password. So now you have this hash, which probably isn't going to show up in any password list because the password just looks like that. And in order to numbers, symbols, etc. Does I would think the only thing that matters is that the password just becomes a lot more convoluted. One thing though is if you keep using the same salt for your password, um, then attackers might actually be able to figure out that you're using the exact same salt, and that would be bad. Uh, so generally, dynamic salting is used, where each time you salt something, it generates a different random string. Um, but yeah, I don't know if the difference between characters makes any difference, like password one versus password. Okay. Well, both password one and password are very weak passwords that are going to be found in pretty much all password lists. So the salt needs to be um, good enough such that it's not going to show up in any list. There is a way for Hashcat to break salts like this, but you do need to know what the salt is. So here's the command for that. It's very similar to the previous command, except instead of M0, we have M20. And M20, as you can see here, specifies that this is an MD5 salted hash. There's also 10 for when the salt comes after the password. For the ones that I generated, though, the online generator I used put the salt before the password, so that's why I'm using the 20 flag. Okay, and there's some hashes for us to crack. I'll just demonstrate this. I'll demonstrate this in Hashcat since you guys are just watching. Okay, so those are the old hashes. Those what we want to do is put those in there. But we're going to put the salts as immediately after the hashes, followed by a colon like this. Okay. And then if we run this command, it should be able to crack it. Yep, there they are. Those are the very bad passwords. But since they were salted, we needed to know the salts to actually be able to crack them. Okay. Now, the next kind of attack we can use on hashes is what's called a mask attack. And a mask attack is related to a brute force attack. So remember, with the brute force attack, you're pretty much trying every combination of password until you get the right hash. A mask attack is used when you actually know something about the password, like if you know how long it is, better yet, if you know where it uses special characters, where it uses numbers, and stuff like that. Um, so it's like a brute force attack, but you can restrict the number of combinations it needs to try, so it can become a lot faster. Um, what you can do in Hashcats is you can use what's called char sets to specify the structure of the password. So as you can see here, question mark L specifies all lowercase letters, question mark U specifies uppercase letters, question mark D is all digits, um, question mark S is all the special characters, uh, and so on. You can also create custom char sets, which I'm not going to do in this workshop, but you can do that. And I'll show you how cracking with this works. So now the attack mode you're going to be using is attack mode 3, which is the brute force attack. And you're going to specify the mask. I think in theory you should be able to just have the mask on the command line itself, but I actually haven't been able to get that to work. So you can instead have a different file, the mask file, and put the mask file there instead. It just works the same. So let me demonstrate by cracking both of these passwords. So this one, as it specifies here, is four letters followed by 2 special characters. Now, as you can see there, I've got a mask file. I'm going to open that up, and it looks like I've already got it in there. But what that's basically says is that each of those is a char set. So question mark L is, as you can see, a lowercase letter char set. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those question mark L's, which means 4 lowercase letters, and then question mark S, which means 2 special characters. And that's exactly what we need to crack this hash over here. So let's load that into hashes.txt. Okay, and now with this command, except instead of that, I'll be having the mask file. Yeah, there it is. It was able to break it. The password was VDIL ampersand carrots. And that's something that's probably not going to show up in a word list. But as you've seen, if you can specify some restrictions to the brute forcing of the password, then Hashcat will be able to brute force it pretty quickly. Let's just do the next one. This is something that you might see in a CTF challenge, for example. The flags might be in a specific form, like sky HQEI, and followed by 4 numbers, or maybe it's flag something something something. But this is also something that will make our lives easier when trying to crack a hash. If we go back to the mask file, we can get rid of that. We can actually put this directly in there. And the question mark will be numbers. So that will be the question mark. Oops. D, 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 D. Okay, so what that mask is it's telling Hashcat the hashes of the form sky dash HQEI dash and then 4 digits. So then that should be pretty easy for Hashcat to brute force. Let's go back to hashes.txt. And if we put this in there now, okay, then we should be able to run the same command. And there it is. Sky HQEI 8616. So yeah, we have broken that. And now I'm just gonna quickly talk about some other hash cracking tools. I think Hashcat is probably going to be the most useful. This is so much nicer than writing custom Python script. Yeah. So I think Hashcat is probably going to be the most useful, but there are some other useful ones. This one, John the Ripper and Ophcrack. Again, you can install those if you want to follow along, but you don't have to. John the Ripper is, I would say, simpler than Hashcat in some ways. It's got 3 modes of attack. The word list, which is a standard dictionary attack that I've been showing you. Incremental, which is just straight brute force. And single crack, which is somewhat different. Single crack is useful if you've got a password dump file, which not only has the passwords, but also other user information. From what I know, from what I've read, John will actually use that other information to try to see if the password is related to that other information. I don't fully understand it, but it's kind of like using a word list, except John determines the word list from a narrower and more relevant set of rules, rather than just having a general word list. And that would be, this over here would be the command to just crack MD5 hashes with the word list like we've seen previously. And I could show that to you, but it's basically going to be the same thing. Let us load up our hash. Let's choose one. Let's choose this one. Let's hashes.txt. And then when we run John the Ripper, again, using the same RockU list. Should get, nope, huh? That's weird. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. It's not that important though. We will just move on. Okay, and the next one is Ophcrack, which is designed specifically um, for Windows systems. Did I update the hash file? Yeah, I think I updated the hash file. Or do you mean the pot file? It's definitely in there. Okay, so Windows systems use this authentication protocol called LM or NTLM. And so Ophcrack is designed to crack those hashes specifically. So it's useful, I guess, if you've forgotten your password to a Windows system. And this is, whoops. This over here, this is what one of those hashes is going to look like. It's got two parts to it. Before and after the colon over here. I think it's like the NT part and the LM part. I don't exactly know how the protocol works, but similar similar to the Hashcat word list attacks we've seen before, you need a folder full of hashes, and I actually have that. You can see where is it? You can see tables XB free small that has a bunch of passwords in it. And if you use that command, it should be able to work on yeah. Yeah, so I have a number of NTLM hashes in there. Then using this, it should be able to work on those. Let's see if it works. Okay, yep, it found them. Those were the passwords to those hashes. So yeah, moral of the story is if your password is bad, it's going to be able to easily be cracked by one of these tools, very easily, like in a second, as you've seen. And that is the end of my presentation. You're welcome. Can you guys unmute, or are you still muted? What was the codo? It's hash. Chris, can you enable unmuting? Okay, bye, Bryce. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Have you enabled unmuting?
Yeah, everyone should be able to unmute.
Okay.
But I guess if nobody had questions, I was just going to cover that question Tristan asked earlier about the difference between characters, numbers, symbols, etc. And
Okay.
so, like the reason why you see all of those like different things out there about password security comes down to the fact that for someone to actually come up with a new hash, they have to run a brute force attack. So the difference between like the word list and like rainbow tables is those are things people already have confirmed are passwords that exist like out in the world. So like RockU is very famous because it's like one of the largest collections of known passwords. And so basically what these programs are doing, John and Hashcat, they are basically taking whatever hash function you want and inputting that word list into that hash function and then comparing the hashes with the hash document that you gave them. And so the thing is if you can come up with a unique password, so for someone to able to get that hash, either they need to dump like the database file, right? And that's what's always in the news, or they're going to have to brute force it. And so the more characters that you have, the longer it is, the more numbers you have, the more like variation. All that means is it's going to take more time for someone to hack that password, like actually brute force that password. But in reality, again, so it's like if you always do like what we saw with the masking, if you do a word and then a number, then that shortens the brute force time because of like it's a known thing. So if you ever see password like companies that say, oh, there's limitations on characters or limitations on length, then those are kind of like bad security features, because not only are you letting the hacker know like what the rules are, but also that's less of a chance for the hash function.
I think some UCSD login credentials has a max 8-character password limit.
Yeah, the Active Directory is like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. So the whole reason why UCSD went with the 2-factor authentication, I think, was driven a lot by the oh shoot, what's that website called that everyone uses? The homework answer one.
Chegg?
Yeah, Chegg. Chegg got hacked, right? So it dumped all those passwords. And because students, they don't really understand security, so they're reusing their passwords, which is like the big no-no in the world. So basically whatever their Chegg password was, it was also their student password at UCSD. And so
Yikes.
Yeah, people were breaking in to student accounts.
Some of that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I feel like normally people reuse passwords, so students reusing is not a surprise.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, now we have 2FA for it.
Yeah.
Oh, Duo.
Yep, Duo.
Awesome. Did anyone else have any other questions on this topic before we stop the recording and call it a night?
Yeah, Jelena, did you have questions?
I guess so. For everything here, do you need to like have access to hash? And if so, like how often is hashes straight up leaked on the internet?
That is a good question. Well, to crack the passwords, you do need the hash. Either that or you just manage to get the plain text passwords from a leak, which is even better if you're a malicious hacker. But you will need the hashes. As for how often it happens, Chris, do you think you know?
Well, so the password dumps happen probably every day across like the world. But really, if you're talking about cracking a password, like if I just sit here and try to log into your Facebook account and I can try to brute force, which is, just send the a new password like every minute. Like you'll see like on, iPhones, if you type in the wrong password, you get locked out for like 10 minutes. And then if you do it again, you get locked out for an hour. And you do it long enough, you like get permanently locked out. So those kind of things help with the password attacks from brute forcing, because really, yeah, if you don't have the hash, then you probably are never going to break a password if there's other security features.
All right, hoping that none of my passwords are leaked then.
Yeah. I highly recommend like a password manager or like keeping all your passwords like in a secret Google document or something like that.
LastPass is free. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's the only reason I totally use LastPass. But some people, if you get like really big into security, they'll tell you, you can never trust any third party out there. So it's better not to use those things.
What's the one that's like open source and like you manage the vault?
Oh man,
You know what I'm talking? Yeah.
like it starts with a B.
Yeah.
Bitwarden. Is it Bitwarden?
Yeah, there you
Bitwarden.
go. Bitwarden.
Yes. But it's so complicated to like. It's not complicated to set up, but then like to maintain it is annoying.
Yep. Yeah, that's like the key thing.
Okay, well, if that's it, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Let us stop recording.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.